Mother, tell your children not to walk my way. Tell your children not to hear my words, what they mean, what they say. Mother, mother, can you keep them in the dark for a while? Can you hide them from the wedding?
Hello, and yes, I said I was going to do this, so I guess I will try to do it, which was a lot of people have been asking for a while for me to do another MMA vid, so I figured this would be a good chance because we've had a couple things happen. I don't think I've done one since Fedor's loss, so I guess I should probably talk about that, even though that was eons ago. But Fedor lost. Yay, Fedor lost. My opinion, he got caught by being too aggressive. Maybe I've talked about it. It seems like I've talked about this before, but anyways, to me that's kind of what happened. And then really what I'd like to talk about is the fact that then all of a sudden we had this debate about who should be ranked number one as far as the top heavyweight in the world, and it seemed kind of odd to me, and the reason was because the only reason that the UFC title champion was not ranked number one was because Fedor was ranked number one, and the reason why he was ranked number one was because no one had beaten him, and he was number one, no one had beaten him, and he basically had stayed number one. That's why people said he was number one. Then he lost. To me, even when Fedor was number one, whoever the UFC champion should have always been number two. Which, of course, was Brock Lesnar, which no one wanted to be number two because they thought that was disgraceful. But he was the champion. And on top of that, I will say this. Brock Lesnar actually brought, I'm not going to say credibility to the belt because that's not accurate, but he made the belt actually mean something in the terms of people forget that when Pride was around, that the UFC belt was seen as just kind of like the Strikeforce heavyweight title belt is seen, because no one, yes, Randy has done lots for the sport, but no one believed Randy Couture was the number one heavyweight in the world at that point. When Pride went away, people were still like, well, Fedor's still the number one, and, he's just the uncrowned number one because he's not in UFC, and people felt if he had been in UFC, he would beat everybody in UFC. So that's why he was number one and not the UFC champion. But but Brock came along, put excitement around the belt, actually made the belt, I don't want to act like he brought credibility to it, but he actually made it seem important, even though it should have been important the whole time, but he actually made it seem important. So that's a good thing, as much as people are probably throwing, parties that he lost, but, that's a good thing. And now Cain Velasquez is a big deal, because, he's the one that beat Brock, much like a lot of people felt whoever would beat, Fedor the first time, that would be a big deal. It didn't turn out to be such a big deal, because I think most people just saw it as Fedor being overly aggressive, and probably if they did the fight again, he would make the same mistake. Because if you watch the fight, you kind of sense that he was going to get caught, because he kept trying to go for something that wasn't there, and you're like, he's going to get caught if he's not careful, and he wound up getting caught. But, so Brock has lost. So, that's good so now, we have all of that going. I'm sure you have a lot of UFC fans, a lot of MMA fans that are glad that Brock has lost. So we now have that, and without a doubt, Cain should be ranked number one in the world. I have no doubt in my mind for that, and probably from this point going forward, the UFC champion, heavyweight champion, should be deemed as the number one heavyweight in the world, bar none. So there we go. However, that's not the only thing I wanted to really talk about. What I really want to talk about is, I think I've talked about this, but I don't think I've ever really gone in depth about this, is that I've had, not anymore, it's kind of a self-imposed ban as far as buying UFC pay-per-views. And the reason for that, there's two reasons, well, not for the bans, but the reason why I don't buy pay-per-views is two reasons. One is the fact that I'm usually at work when the pay-per-views start, and I don't get home until after they've well started, and I really don't want to go from work to a bar to watch it. If I'm off, I usually go to a bar. But the second reason, and the more important reason, why I haven't bought UFC pay-per-views in forever, has to do with WEC, because I thought it was very stupid for Zuffa to have two promotions. I know some people didn't feel it was dumb. I did, because to me, I thought that if you put some of those WEC guys and those lighter guys on the UFC pay-per-views, it would make the pay-per-views better. It would make them feel more like you were getting your money's worth, a better show, that whole thing, and I thought the guys deserved the money. Well, now they are doing away with WEC, and that's a good thing for that purpose. It is a bad thing in some ways, because we're not going to get as much free Zuffa MMA on television. Apparently, they're only going to do 4 UFC shows on Versus, and then however many shows they do on Spike, so it's not going to be as wondrous as it once was. And I always loved the WEC shows, because the WEC shows were old. You know, I mean, you might be able to count on your hand the amount of bad WEC shows there were. Maybe. Honestly, I can only think of like 3 or 4 that I would say were bad. Most of them were always very good. Most of them, my opinion, were far better than a lot of the UFC pay-per-views. So that's good. That's wonderful. That without a doubt means that I will be spending money now, probably at my house, not going to bars as much, to watch UFC events. So that's good. There's only one gripe now with UFC, and that is production. And I know a lot of people gripe when I bring up production, but to me, it is a big deal, because when I do go to bars and I am around a lot of people, and particularly boxing fans, they bring it up. And people bring it up because people always bring up the fact that UFC doesn't seem to spend a dime on production compared to HBO boxing. Because, and it's true, you watch an HBO and you're like, why doesn't UFC do this stuff? Why doesn't UFC try to make it look as good as this? And they don't do it. And part of, and all the other things that they don't do because they don't want to be pro wrestling, which is just stupid in my opinion, because do it while you're hot. Because if you do it while you're hot, if UFC starts going through a dip, or UFC starts going through just a stale time, and then you throw in all the pro wrestling-esque stuff, then all of the people who hate MMA are going to jump on it and go, oh, look, you're just doing this just because, you're going through tough times, it's getting stale, you're not as popular as you were. If you do it while you're popular and you fight that stuff now, when you can fight it and go, hey, we're doing it because, this is what the fans wanted to make the shows better, this, that, and the other, whatever. But they're so paranoid about not being pro wrestling that, that's a big deal. But we're finally going to get some of these WEC guys on UFC pay-per-views. That will only make the pay-per-views and the shows, and hopefully they put some of these guys on the free TV shows as well. That will only make these shows better, without a question. So, that's all I just really wanted to come on here and ramble about. So, with that, I'm out. Have a good one, and later.